Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. Welcome today to a slightly longer than usual preamble. If those words fill you with dread, or if you just want to see pretty pictures of the watch, that's okay. I'll leave a timestamp in the description of the video. You're welcome to skip ahead. I would suggest that you don't though. As a YouTube watch reviewer, I get a number of emails each week from companies asking me if I'd be interested in reviewing their watches. Now these are mostly smaller companies, i.e. micro brands, and quite often brands just about to launch their first ever watch. And these emails vary considerably, shall we say. Some brand owners are very polite, some are passionate yet humble, and some make huge, outlandish claims about their watches. And a very select few are polite, passionate yet humble, and make huge, outlandish claims about their watches. I got one such email from someone called JG Shim, the owner of a brand new Korean microbrand, Varon Chiri, back in September. The email was titled, "Polite request to review the new watch brand, Varon Chiri." And who am I not to respond politely to such a polite request? In the email, JG was very pleasant, saying he was looking for a powerful influencer who will review the watch. I guess that's me. He also told me he had poured all of himself into this project and went on to say he was very positive you will be able to look at this watch and say, wow, and was sure Varon Chiri's first edition will not let you down. So, after a few more emails back and forth to clarify some of the details and the timing, I agreed to review the watch. In one of those subsequent emails, he told me about his ambitions to eventually produce more of the watch, including the movements in Korea. And he said that although this was his first product and there might be some points that needed to be upgraded, he hoped that I would look upon the birth of a fine watchmaker. The quote on today's thumbnail, "Talk about setting yourself up." Now it's a three-handed dressy sports watch, so it's a little bit different from the divers and GMTs that tend to be what I'm being offered at the moment. And it's Korean made, which is a channel first, and I was looking forward to saying, wow. Now I made it clear to JG that any review would be an honest reflection of my thoughts about the watch, including good and any bad. The dreaded moans and niggles section. I then waited patiently for the watches to arrive here from Korea. Now this is a Kickstarter project, it goes live in a few days time. I will of course leave links in the description of the video to their website and or the campaign as appropriate. Now it has been delayed a bit, so I've had plenty of hands-on time with the watches since they arrived in Sydney. And a few days ago I got back in touch with JG and I said, look, this is not going to be a 2 thumbs up positive video. I said I thought the watches were nice, but they didn't make me go, wow, and the price was a little high. I couldn't recommend them with all of my heart to all of you. Now, I'm not in the business of shit on people's dreams. I do make the occasional nasty video, but the only people I shit on there tend to be faceless mega corporations who neither know that I exist nor care about my opinions, and not people who have poured all of themselves into a project. So I offered JG a choice. Did he want me to proceed with the review on the basis that it might not be all that positive, or did he want me to cancel the review and send me a shipping label for the return of the watches? Now, I think most brand owners would have sent me a shipping label within 30 seconds of receiving that email. But in fairness to the man, that's not what he did. He told me to carry on with the video. He said that he did not want overly positive reviews and that he had an open mind to listen to the voice of worldwide watch enthusiasts, including me, and I'm guessing all of you in the comments section. So, you may not like what you see today, but I think we all have to give a nod of respect to any brand owner who knowingly and willingly opens themselves up to constructive criticism from both me and from you. Okay, so that's a bit of extra context to today's review then. I like parts of this watch, but I do have some reservations. I kind of see what they're trying to do here. I'm just not sure they've done it to the best of their own advantage. But as always, mine is the opinion of one man alone. And I say to all of you what I say to people who email me asking for advice about specific watches. If you like it, and crucially, if you think you'll actually wear it, then you go for it. Let's flip the camera and have a look at it. Yes, indeed, I think it's high time we did just that, starting, as is the way of things, with the packaging. Now, I must admit, A big old shiny box does raise the red flag for me. I do get a bit worried when I see high gloss, that perhaps too much time, effort and money was spent on the box and not enough on its content. It is a nice box though. 2-year warranty on all of these. Now I was sent 2 different versions of the watch to have a look at. This one in turquoise, which actually features a Korean edition pattern on the outer chapter ring. And this one in black, which is the standard version with minute and fifth of a minute markers, hash markers, rather than the attractive Korean pattern. If it's an option in the campaign, I think I'd probably go for the pattern. I think it's more interesting. And this is a tricky watch to film. Sometimes I plonk a watch onto this lump of wood, I switch on my camera and it comes alive. Not so the Varon Chiri. I mean, have a look at this static shot of this one in turquoise. It looks okay, but nothing special I don't think anyway. It's only when I switch to a dynamic shot that this watch really comes to life. The sunburst, the high polished silver Dauphine hands, all of those high polished silver indices really popping. It's quite a remarkable transformation between the 2 shots, I think. Similarly, the black one, which surely is the most conservative colourway anyway, you know, when it's sitting there doing its own thing and I've got a slow, gentle zoom in on a static shot, it looks okay. But again, when I switch to the dynamic shot, when I'm moving this thing around and when it plays and catches with the light, that's when this watch looks at its best for sure. Of that there can be no doubt. So what is it? How would I describe it? Well, in one of the few parts of JG's emails that I didn't publish in the introduction, sorry about that JG, he refers at length to Furlan Mari. Now, if you haven't heard of that brand, you should probably click on the link in the top corner of the screen and check out my review for a start. They were a big hit last year, essentially by legitimising the purchase and ownership of a Patek Philippe homage. So Varon Chiri want to be the next Furlan Mari. You can see that with the fancy packaging and with the decidedly Patek Philippe Calatrava style looks of this watch that they call the Blazer. But rather than go full homage like Furlan Mari did, they pulled back from that a bit, added some colour on the dials, a unique custom bracelet, and at least one component that you will never ever see on a Patek Philippe. Now, apparently they surveyed 750 watch lovers to help guide them in terms of the sizing of this one, and this is what they came up with. 38.5mm in diameter, which I must admit I do have a bit of a penchant for myself, 10mm thick on the nose, 44.5 lug to lug, 20mm lug width, tapering all the way down to 15.5 and back up to nearly 18 at the clasp. Sized up for my 7-inch wrist, it weighs in at 117 grams. That is a really nice set of dimensions for an everyday dressy / sports watch. The case finish is perfectly pleasant, super fine brushing to the sides, high polish to the upper lug surfaces, and a high polished fixed bezel which houses a piece of flat sapphire crystal with beveled edges. There's a slight high polish undercut, but the dimensions being what they are, this one doesn't really need any more help on wrist. It is very, very comfortable anyway. The unguarded crown is pretty big though. They could probably have taken a third off of it and it would still have been really easy to use. It's screw down, which is nice, 100 meters of WR. Then there is the bracelet. The bracelet is actually quite interesting. Female end links, solid end links with quick release. They do offer a genuine alligator strap for just under 100 as an option if you're keen though. 3-link style with high polished centre links and satin brushed outer links, but there's an additional high polished chamfer to those outer edges, and it's the outer links that are responsible for that big old taper down towards the clasp. It's actually a very pleasant visual effect overall, and the bracelet is nice and comfortable. But then there's the clasp. They've chosen to call it a G-lock style clasp. You and I know it as a glide lock style, straight off the Rolex Submariner. The raised centre section is high polished, just like the mid links on the rest of the bracelet, but rather than a coronet, the Varon Chiri logo features on the fold over. The logo, by the way, is the pommel from a Korean sword that is produced every year of the tiger to help ward off evil spirits. This is the year of the tiger, by the way, if you're not up to speed with your Asian zodiac. I will talk more about the clasp later on. I didn't find either of the two that they sent me particularly easy to use or particularly satisfying to operate. Dial and hands then, rather Patek, but without being a 1-for-1 of any specific model, and with a few touches of its own. It's a very nice sunburst effect on the turquoise dial, but not on the black. The logo is applied, the brand name, model name, automatic, and Korea made are all just printed on. Korea made, I assume, is similar to made in Germany, i.e. pretty loose. We clearly have a Japanese movement in this and a lot of parts that are made in China, so it's more about assembly and casing. Indices are also applied, beaver's teeth at 12, 3, 6 and 9, and rectangular singles everywhere else. They're all high polished silver, and the sides and the forward edges are all faceted, hence that very pleasant dynamic shimmering you saw earlier on. Now perhaps you have already noticed the Dauphine hands are really long here, and that is quite deliberate. The minute hand pushes all the way out to the very edge of the minute track. The second hand gets its own chapter ring, sitting half a step above the dial itself, half a step below the sapphire. Now the Korean version does sacrifice all of those hash marks, but I'm never really convinced they're necessary on this style of watch anyway. But that's definitely an interesting feature, the little stepped outer ring. The case back is pretty plain and one of those that's almost impossible to take off. It just features the logo etched into it and that traditional Korean patterning again etched around the outside. Miyota 9039 behind it, that's the no date specific version of the Miyota 9000 series. On wrist it does wear very pleasantly. You can see looking down the wrist it's very slim, it has a fairly short lug to lug, and because they chose to put a G-lock on it, you're pretty much guaranteed to get exactly the fit that you wanted. There's plenty to look at on wrist, particularly with this turquoise version just because it has sunburst, albeit a very mild sunburst. And you know there's plenty of high polish on both the head of the watch, the bracelet, and the centre section of the bracelet clasp also. Legibility isn't too bad actually. The hands are really long and so shiny and high polished, as are those indices, that they do a good job of catching the light and therefore catching your eye, even when the light isn't particularly strong. Now, two pocket shots of two watches worn two different ways. I'm wearing the turquoise one loose because I can, thanks to that glide lock clasp. At 120 grams, it's not a taxing watch to wear loose like this below the knuckle. But of course, as you can see with the black dial version, if you want to wear it high and tight, that is also your privilege thanks to that clasp. Well look, none of this is so bad. Why were you going to send the poor man his watches back, Jody? Well, perhaps there was just a little bit too much self-aggrandizement in his emails. Perhaps I was expecting too much. The wow that I never quite got. Perhaps that's because I just don't find this watch particularly interesting or characterful. I mean, the black one especially really doesn't have a lot to it or a lot to distinguish it from the competition, and I'm not a big fan of the model name Blazer. I guess that's what they expect owners of these watches to wear. Maybe I'm just not a blazer guy. I'm a t-shirt guy. And the glide lock, look, it definitely has its advantages, but it's not a particularly good one, I don't think, and it's definitely very weird seeing it on a watch like this. The watches in my collection featuring glide locks are all Rolex Submariner lookalikes to one degree or another, the Jeanneau Ocean Rover and the Tissot Marine Diver, to pick just two of them. This style of clasp suits that style of watch because it's what you expect. Here I would be expecting probably a butterfly, maybe some kind of deployant style like on a Citizen or a Seiko, but not a glide lock. And I'm just not sure that at $420 this one is particularly good value. JG did point out that his production costs are high because of the Korean assembly and that it costs him $35 each time to ship these by DHL, but even still. Earlier this week I looked at the Benkler Rocks Diver, which had so much more going on, featuring the same 9000 series movement, and came in $80 cheaper than this one. I was trying to think of another watch that costs a similar price to this one, and I was reminded of the Second Hour Mandala. It was an identical $420 on Kickstarter earlier last year, but every single piece of that watch was designed for that watch, and it just had so much more character than the Varon Chiri does. It also had a display caseback with custom rotor, cantilevered indices, loom, and a whole bunch of other things that must have cost that company money, but they were still able to offer it for the same price as this one. Maybe the whole Furlan Mari thing took this brand in the wrong direction. They seem to have tried to do something with a bit of Patek in it, and a bit of its own style in it, but I don't think they've quite succeeded in doing either. For sure, I would love to be able to review an affordable Korean-made movement at some point in the future, and for that movement to be in the back of a Varon Chiri. I just hope it's got a little bit more character than this one does. So there you have it. Maybe you agree with me today, maybe you don't. Some nice touches with the step chapter ring and interesting hand lengths, and it's a neat and tidy watch to wear. But the clasp, I'm just not sure it goes with the watch, and I'm not sure how much value there is in it at $420 US, and with months to wait until the watches are actually delivered. I do wish them well though. Clearly the brand owner has aspirations beyond this specific watch, and they seem to be fairly noble aspirations as well. If you don't fancy this one, why not check out the watch that I referred to in the video, the second hour Mandala, or if you want a sub 40mm daily driver that is just ridiculous value for money, have a look at the Tissot PR100. Thanks for watching this one. I will see you again in a future video, I hope.